This is Making the Case. I'm Laverne McGee, in for Yodit. Day 4 of jury selection in the trial of the men accused of killing Ahmaud Arbery is over, and while we still haven't seen a single juror selected, we did get some insight into how the attorneys on both sides and the judge plan to tackle this high-profile trial. Dozens more of the 1,000 potential jurors answered questions today. The first goal, and possibly the most important, is to find a pool of 64 prospective jurors. They'll be then whittled down to the final jury of 12 plus 4 alternates. Hear the case against Travis McMichael, McMichael, William Bryan. BNC's Drake Clark is in Brunswick, where the support for the Ahmaud Arbery and his family is growing outside the court, and it's even becoming a topic of discussion inside the courtroom.
Glenn County, Georgia has long been known as one of the most beautiful places in the state, but now it's known for something very ugly that happened here. After the death of Ahmaud Arbery became public, there were demonstrations and demands for justice. For the most part, the demonstrations were peaceful. No rioting, no looting, no broken glass or burning buildings or cars. But the black people in this community are very angry. They say what happened to Ahmaud Arbery was like a modern-day lynching. Glenn County, Georgia, a rural and coastal community in the Deep South. 85,000 people live here, and they're mostly white. Like many other places in the South, race has always been an issue here. The killing of Ahmaud Arbery has reopened old wounds. Arbery was black. His accused killers are all white. And he was killed in an area called Satilla Shores, known for not being receptive to black people.
To know what a lynching looks like historically and what we witnessed with our own eyes.
After Arbery died, Bobby Henderson helped start the group A Better Glenn. The group helped bring attention to Arbery's death. At first, Henderson says Arbery was mischaracterized. The local newspaper, he says, called Arbery a home invader with a criminal rap sheet.
Well, they talked about his past, talked about run-ins with the law, you know, how they run brothers down when, something like this happens.
But when video of Arbery's killing was leaked 3 months after the shooting, it told and showed a much different story. Arbery was chased, confronted, and killed. His accused killers, Travis and Gregory McMichael, told police they believed Arbery was a burglary suspect and they shot him in self-defense. William Bryan, also charged with murder, recorded the shooting on his cell phone.
The leak of the video has been imperative to actually getting justice.
The black community cried, "Not again." The white community here stayed mostly quiet. But Pastor Drew Thompson, a white minister with the church in Brunswick, made sure to talk about it.
We talked about it, we prayed.
The discussion was uncomfortable, but Pastor Drew was unwavering. His church was not going to look the other way.
We've talked a lot about his murder.
He says the opportunity is here now for the entire community, black and white, to listen to each other, to pray, to cry out, and ask for justice.
In Christ, we must be one family, that we must be one family across racial and social lines, and that process is really hard and messy, and the only way you have a prayer of that happening is the gospel.
We have to have the collective will of all the people, and more people are waking up to that reality every day.
And it is the community who will sit in judgment of those 3 white men who are charged with murdering Ahmaud Arbery. The black community says it's very optimistic that whomever ends up on the jury will return 3 guilty verdicts for all 3 men. In Brunswick, Georgia, I'm Drake Clark for Making the Case.
It's really fascinating how this jury selection process is playing out. We're going to get some insights now from an expert. Joining us from Atlanta is attorney CK Hoffler. She's the former president of the National Bar Association. CK, great to have you here. I want to start with something that Dre has been addressing in all of his reports. All these people showing up, showing support for the Arbery family outside the courthouse. So many. It even came up in the courtroom today. One of the defense attorneys told the judge that he's actually concerned about the signs, the banners, and the rallies. He specifically asked the judge to, quote, prohibit any signs openly advocating for justice for Ahmaud Arbery on the grounds of the Glenn County Courthouse. Another member of the defense said they are, quote, concerned with any conscious or unconscious attempt to influence any jurors. But the judge, he didn't seem to agree. He reminded them that the courthouse grounds, they're public, and suggested that the defense draft a motion, quote, walking me through the First Amendment rights you seek to infringe upon. CK, what do you think about all of this exchange? Does the defense have any legal grounds here?
Well, first of all, good evening. In my impression, the defense is on very, very shaky legal grounds. It would clearly be an infringement of the First Amendment rights of those organizations such as Transformative Justice Coalition that had banners that were marching and protesting peacefully. There was no violence, there was no obstruction. They have a very strong relationship with the local law authorities there. And in fact, the sheriff came out and said he didn't understand what the defense was saying because all of the groups that are there in support of the Arbery family have been operating in a very peaceful, respectful manner. So this is preposterous, to be very frank, and I have to be honest. I have been approached by Transformative Justice Coalition, and they have hired me to be their counsel. So I am assembling a team just in case the defense believes that they can nullify and cause people who are peacefully protesting to not be there. That would be an infringement of their First Amendment rights. I think it would be unconstitutional, and it would be a travesty.
Well, CK, you're giving us some breaking news then that you may become involved with this then, if it gets to that level. And do you think it will get to that level?
I think there's a good chance because I think the defense, it appears they can't help themselves. And making statements that they're concerned that there may be obstruction of justice, that there's an attempt to impact jurors. I mean, that is just preposterous. A young man was gunned down, chased down like a dog. And this was akin to a modern day lynching. The community should be up in arms. People from all around this country and the world are up in arms about this case, just as they were about the murder of George Floyd. There's nothing wrong with that. It is their right as U.S. citizens. They're protesting peacefully. There's been no obstruction. Even the judge said to the defense, you need to show me, and I'm paraphrasing, show me and walk me through how it is permissible to infringe on the First Amendment rights of the citizens who have the right to be there and to protest peacefully. And I'd be curious to see what the brief
absolutely.
Is. It's preposterous, really.
And the defense, they actually asked at least one prospective juror if they walked through the front entrance of that courthouse. You know, they wanted to know what that person saw. What's the impact from their perspective?
Well, I have to tell you, I think that is, during voir dire, which is a process of jury deselection. Now, I believe in liberal voir dire, jury selection. And the reason for that is because you need to know how people feel about certain issues. So that they asked that question, I wasn't enamored with that question, but they're entitled to find out how people feel about certain issues. However, they should not harass every prospective Black juror and not ask the same of all jurors. I think that would be somehow uneven, but they do have the right to question the jury pool the way that they see fit to protect the interests of their clients so that they could have a fair and impartial jury to sit and listen to the evidence. But, the other side, the prosecutors are going to have the right and do have the right to ask similar questions. I do think that this is the mere notion that the defense feels that they could be able to quiet people, to prevent them from protesting, to prevent them from expressing what constitutionally they have the right to express under the U.S. Constitution. First Amendment rights in this country are sacrosanct. For them to believe that they can somehow shut that down is incredible, and they better be very careful. Because if the judge does grant their motion and those peaceful protesters are told to leave, there's going to be a First Amendment fight and there will be a case within a case. So if I were them, I wouldn't do it.
Sounds like this could snowball.
It could snowball. It could really snowball.
So CK, we want to know more about the questioning of these potential jurors. I want to go over a couple of things because we've been talking a lot this week about how the size of this community and how everybody is so interconnected. Take juror 236, for example. We can't divulge, of course, too much about these people. We have to protect their identities. But she herself revealed in court that she's worried about, quote, an appearance of impropriety because of her job and the fact that she knows Gregory McMichael, yet she wasn't immediately let go. And she said no when the defense asked if she had access to information that other people on the jury wouldn't have. And then when the judge asked, quote, given your knowledge of Greg McMichael sitting here today, are you completely neutral in the case? She said yes. CK, we know the metric for what's acceptable has to change given the size of this community, but how close is too close?
Well, close is very close. Everyone in this community, I believe, they all know each other. This is a very small community. When you talk about getting 1,000 people, when the global population is 85,000, think about that. Everyone probably is laser focused on this case. They're going to know the McMichaels in particular. They probably also will know William Bryan. And so it's not enough to exclude them, that they know them, that they have some connection. The key is, do they have a bias? Are they predisposed? How do they feel about certain issues? And if they feel strongly about the issues, can they set aside those feelings and sit in judgment of this evidence and follow the law? Usually, if you feel pretty strongly about these issues, if you know someone really, really well, if you're a member of their family or you're closely related to that person, and you feel that way, and on a scale of 1 to 10, you're closer to the 8 or 9, you're not typically going to be able to set aside your strong feelings and sit in judgment of the facts and look at the issues in this case. So the key for both sides is going to be to eliminate those jurors who cannot be impartial because of their feelings, because of their knowledge of the community, because of their knowledge of the players in the community, and get rid of those who would harm one side or the other because they can't be impartial. You know, if you ask anyone, hey, can you be impartial? They're going to say, of course I can be impartial. Of course I can be neutral. That, in my humble impression, is not the question. Is when you get to the heart of the issues that are of concern to them, can they set aside strong feelings one way or the other so they can sit in judgment, look at the facts, and follow the law in the case as instructed by the judge? That's what they have to get to. And you've got to poll them on a scale of 1 to 10. How strongly do you feel about these issues? And unless you delve into that, you won't get a true feeling of how some of these jurors feel, and you won't really know if you should try to exclude them.
Yeah, this might be a tough one, but CK, I need you to stay with us because after the break, we're going to talk about some of these interesting responses from these prospective jurors and see if their answers raise any red flags for the other side. Stay with us. We'll be right back. This is Making the Case. Welcome back, everyone. We've been talking about jury selection happening in the trial of Gregory McMichael, Travis McMichael, and William Bryan. They are the men accused of killing Ahmaud Arbery. We're talking about the process, and it looks like it's going to take a while. Back with us from Atlanta, former National Bar Association President CK Hoffler. CK, we saw something a bit different today. A slightly larger number of people raising their hands during group questioning to say that they actually want to serve on this jury. One of those was prospective juror 219 on serving. She said she believes in doing what you're called to do if you're able. She also told the prosecution she tried to watch the video of the shooting but couldn't finish it. That was horrifying, that video. And she said that while she believes a crime was committed, she did not know the fine details of the case. So CK, what do you make of her responses? And do you think either side actually benefits from someone who actually wants to sit on this jury?
Well, I think it depends. If I am the defense, I'm going to do everything that I can to get her off the jury because she said she believes a crime was committed. She just doesn't have the details of it. If I'm the prosecution, I would delve a little deeper. I'd go a little deeper, but I'm feeling pretty good about someone who off the bat says, I think a crime was committed because the trial is there to determine if there was a crime that was committed. So I think if I'm the defense, very concerned about someone because she's prejudging the facts. If I'm the prosecution, feeling pretty good. I'm going to try to save her depending upon how she answers other questions.
Yeah, I wonder if she really knows what exactly she'd really be getting into. But, you know, not everyone wants to serve. Lots of people in this town have read up on the case. I want to talk now about juror 235. He said he sought out court documents that are actually available online, and he researched Georgia's former citizens arrest law. He also said, quote, I read up because I was trying to learn up a little more for this, and I didn't realize I was reading something I probably shouldn't be reading. So does either side want someone who's already, they've got a lot of information about this case?
Well, I can tell you the prosecution would not want that person because there were a lot of things that he could have researched, but he researched the stand your ground law. And that is what the defense is going to use. So if I'm the prosecution, he's going to go. I'm going to do whatever I can because of all the issues in this case, he chose to focus on that issue. That's a red flag. So if I'm the defense, however, I'm saying, oh yeah, I want this person because somehow this person of all the issues is focusing narrowly on what we are going to be advocating, which is this was in self-defense and that these citizens were just doing a citizen's arrest and they were entitled to do that. I don't want anyone who's going to try to be a lawyer when there are lawyers that are going to be presenting the evidence and explaining the law. So typically, I wouldn't want this kind of person, but I think the defense is probably trying to figure out a way to keep this person while the prosecution is going to try to get the person excused for cause.
Yeah, I know, to take the time to do that, that says a lot. Okay, so let's talk now about the charges. The McMichaels and William Bryan face murder charges, but they're also facing several other charges, including aggravated assault and false imprisonment. So that came up with juror 237 today. He said he could be fair, but when it comes to the video, we're hearing about this video again. He said there's some things that you can't unsee. Heaven knows none of us can unsee that horrible video. He also said that while he has some predetermined judgment, he believes some of the charges are justified and some aren't. What do you make of that?
I make that you need to get rid of that juror because that juror has already made a determination on the evidence without seeing a shred of evidence. They've seen the video. The video is probably more egregious and there could be multiple videos. And so he is coming in predetermining what is and what isn't. I think both sides are probably going to try to get rid of that juror, but it depends on what the follow-up questions reveal.
Okay, so based on the questioning that you've heard so far, CK, what are you seeing as the prime strategy for both sides? I want you to start with the prosecution first.
The prosecution is going to use a strategy to try to get people on the jury pool, from the jury pool, who have an open mind and who feel that people should have the right to just jog. They should not be harassed. They should not be chased down. They're going to want to see how people feel about your individual rights, because they want someone who's going to feel sympathetic towards Ahmaud Arbery, who's not going to feel that what he was doing was so unusual, who's going to feel a sense of injustice, that African Americans maybe are treated worse than others, and that because he was a Black man, he was targeted. That's what I think the prosecutors are going to want to see. They're going to want to have someone who's open-minded and who can look at all of the evidence, not be swayed by three people in the community, one person who has a law enforcement background. The defense, on the other hand, is going to want to have someone who's going to look at the rule of law, who's going to be rigid, who's going to look and say, well, there's this law, stand your ground, and they were just making a citizen's arrest. He was suspicious. They probably had probable cause, and there was nothing wrong with what they were doing. And then this overly aggressive Black man was being very, very confrontational, and they had to shoot him in self-defense. So they're going to want to look at someone who believes in the rule of law, who takes self-defense seriously, and who feels that if you need to defend yourself or your property, you need to do that, and who will be predisposed towards believing that Ahmaud Arbery was being very, very aggressive and that somehow was acting in a way that gave suspicion to these three defendants.
Well, we all saw that video, so it is what it is. But thank you so much, CK. We appreciate you joining us. Former National Bar Association President CK Hoffler, thanks for being with us tonight. And remember to tune in every weeknight for special trial coverage. We'll have a full breakdown of court each weeknight here on Making the Case and BNC.